Well, we welcome you to this special but unfortunate Close Call Sports emergency podcast. By now, you have probably heard of the official dismissal from the Major League Baseball umpiring staff of Major League umpire Pat Hoberg. The gambling allegations are pretty severe. There's a large report that has come down through Major League Baseball. You can read it by going to MLB.com and then hunting down the press releases. And joined, of course, as always, with Lindsay Imber. I'm Tim McCaffrey. And Lindsay, the details and the findings of the investigation were not pretty for Pat Hoberg.
Yeah, this is one of those things that we started covering last year when the investigation first broke. And things did not look good because it was very vague. It was very ominous. MLB came up with some discipline back then that was appealed by the MLB UA, the Umpires Union. And of course, as we found now, the appeal didn't go anywhere and the termination decision has been upheld.
So we've been asked, where are we? What happens from here? And I guess we're at the mercy of the press releases. We know the same information that you do, but one thing that I know just from understanding the way Major League Baseball operates, Linz, is that they hold umpires, players, and staff to the highest integrity of anybody, of any sport that I know of. And in this case, even though it was not found that Pat bet on Major League Baseball games, I think it was well within Major League Baseball's rights to think this situation was extremely odd. I've never heard of a joint gambling account. Some people don't even want to give their checking account to their loved ones, let alone that type of thing where you can lose thousands of dollars. There's a lot of pieces to this story that don't add up, but one thing is certain: Major League Baseball puts the integrity of the game first. There was certainly going to be a lot of questions going forward about Pat Hoberg, despite being the best Major League umpire on the field from a statistical standpoint in a number of categories. I don't know any way that he can still work on a Major League Baseball field, despite the fact that, reading the press release, he is open for reinstatement, the reinstatement door going forward.
So we look at this, we look just of the facts that are presented to us pursuant to MLB's investigation. MLB's investigation found that there was as you mentioned, Timmy, this joint account setup, which was really not Hoberg himself, but his friend who opened a betting account. And Hoberg would occasionally place bets, and Hoberg, according to the report, placed bets on football, basketball, hockey, and golf, which are all allowed. If you're an umpire, you are allowed to bet on non-baseball. But because it was in the same account, the non-Hoberg, the actual person who owned the account, bet on baseball, and further, they found that bets were placed on games in which Hoberg umpired either on the field or in replay review. And as we discussed in our last video regarding the discipline for gambling, there are several different penalties that can result. The first one is if you bet or are found to have bet on baseball but not your game, it is a 1-year suspension. If you have been found to bet on your game, it is a permanent ban. And if there is any other impropriety regarding that, like placing bets through a bookie, it goes to the commissioner for the commissioner's discretion. And this is key because Manfred, in his statement, indicated that he did use his discretion as the commissioner to decide the appropriate punishment was a permanent ineligibility determination. And he specifically writes, does Manfred, Hoberg's extremely poor judgment in sharing betting accounts with a professional poker player he had reason to believe bet on baseball, and who did in fact bet on baseball from shared accounts, combined with his deletion of messages, creates at minimum the appearance of impropriety that warrants imposing the most severe discipline. Therefore, there is just cause to uphold Mr. Hoberg's termination for failing to conform to high standards of personal conduct and to maintain the integrity of the game of baseball. And what that statement means to me is what we've said about umpiring all along, right? This is a perception occupation. What you do or don't do doesn't really matter to the public or even your bosses sometimes as much as what it is perceived that you do or might have done. And furthermore, the conduct that is alleged to have been taken place by Hoberg or anyone involved on that side of things during this through deleting a Telegram account that allegedly was used to communicate bet information, to delete messages, aka deleting evidence, right? That stuff makes it look like you have something to hide. And whatever it is, even though there's no evidence, and it's clear in this report and in the statements from all parties involved that is no evidence that Hoberg bet on baseball, much less his own games. There is no evidence that Hoberg manipulated anything on the field. However, deleting all of the Telegram stuff, deleting the messages, even if it's a nothing, it makes it look like there's that perception that you have something to hide. And that alone is what, for Manfred, appears to have sort of tilted the scales to a permanent ban. Because when you do that, you're effectively seen as obstructing the investigation. And if you're seen as obstructing an investigation, you really lose all benefit of the doubt. So you can say, I didn't bet on baseball, I would never do this, as much as you can. And it's true that there is no evidence that Hoberg bet on baseball or anything to that nature. However, the appearance that is generated by deleting the messages or the accounts that MLB investigators might have wanted to look at, that on its own eliminates any potential goodwill that you might have had. Any benefit of the doubt, that stuff's out the window, because the evidence that they might have wanted to look at is now gone.
So it seemed like the message deletion was a large focal point of when you read through the details. The message deletion seemed to be something that circled back over and over again. And you'd mentioned, I know this is more your neck of the woods when we get into the law and details of it, and then combined with rules, that's not bad. But here we don't need to know the rule book per se. We need to know the law. How much of a factor, once you delete those messages, how much of a factor is that, no matter if they completely found no evidence of him betting on baseball, was that just, you're done? If they had found those messages, could he have kept his job, I guess, is the question.
So what you may not, if you're watching, may or may not know is I work in securities law regarding stocks, bonds, investments, fraud, things like that. And one of the big responsibilities I have is to look through the regulator, the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA's disciplinary reports. And the way that FINRA reports work is basically either a customer brings it to our attention, a firm brings it to attention, somehow it gets the regulator's attention, and their investigative team goes to work to try to figure out, okay, has a broker engaged in misconduct, and if so, how? And they look for paper trail, they look for a whole bunch of things, they'll interview people, they'll do the whole thing. And I've seen many disciplinary actions come out, what are called authorized waivers and the AWCs. These are basically settlements that they have with, or at least not necessarily settlements, but consent documents with the broker that says, okay, you're going to be suspended and fined for this misconduct without admitting the findings, and then you can come back to work when it's done. And that's generally happens when the broker fully cooperates with an investigation. When a broker does not cooperate with an investigation, and further, some of them even refuse to appear for on-the-record testimony, some of them actually do take the step of denying investigators access to documents, much less deleting them. What happens then is the industry is more likely to just issue a full outright permanent ban because you refuse to cooperate with an investigation. A lot of, and FINRA is one of them. I'm not sure if MLB has this or not, but a lot of contracts for employment or registration or affiliation, if there is a potential for an investigation into wrongdoing, if there's a situation that would call for that, such as gambling. So again, I don't know if MLB has this on its books in the contract or not, but if it does, some of those things say that you agree to cooperate with investigators. And if you don't, the reason you get banned is because you fail to abide by your terms of the contract, not for whatever you're alleged to have done wrong, fraud or otherwise, but because you didn't fulfill the requirement of agreeing to go on the record for testimony or provide documents or whatever they're asking. So that might be a big part of it. and it sure sounds like it is. I don't know what the contract, the CBA with the umpire specifically says in terms of their responsibilities during investigations, but just in a private setting like this, deleting texts or messages or accounts that are related to an investigation is likely to land you on the bad side of whatever investigative authority is looking at you.
Well, Major League Baseball does not take lightly to anybody tampering with an investigation. If we can think back to when Angel Hernandez even listened to a phone call that he wasn't a part of, Major League Baseball didn't like that in conducting an investigation on that incident. We remember that, Lindsay, of course. So I can't imagine deleting messages would be a really good idea if you believe in the truth. And what are you hiding? And that certainly gave Pat Hoberg the short end of the stick here for sure.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation. It goes to show that even if you are considered the best umpire in baseball from a statistical standpoint because of that one game in the 2022 World Series where Hoberg was found on the public facing system, that's the zero error system, to have called a 100% accuracy perfect game, even that umpire, it's not going to save you if there's a gambling investigation against you, and either you don't cooperate fully or you give the appearance by virtue of placing bets through proxy in that account, that account is also shown to have bet on baseball games in which you umpired, even if you've never placed a bet in baseball, the association and the affiliation alone is going to look bad. Getting rid of evidence before investigators have a chance to parse it is even worse.
So as we wrap things up here on the dismissal and firing of Pat Hoberg from the Major League Baseball umpiring staff, I guess if there's a lesson that can be learned here, it's very important to know who you're associating with. And if you're associating with somebody that is a known gambler and you're an up-and-coming Major League Baseball umpire, minor league baseball umpire, or even a collegiate baseball umpire, that may not be the best idea with all of the dynamics that are talking about money that is being put into professional baseball, and now even college baseball is being bet on at great numbers. You have to stay away from people that may not have your best interests in heart. And I don't know if individual A, as listed in the I don't know what you call that in the report by Major League Baseball, is a good or a bad person. However, it was a person that has caused the firing of Pat Hoberg. So, the jury might be out on that. But if you like your job, the people you associate with are kind of maybe important to it when you held such an important job as an arbiter of a Major League Baseball game.
Sometimes it's quite important to read your own rule book before you get into it. And in this case, the rule book was the MLB rules for its employees, specifically on-field personnel, players, umpires, etc. But at the end of the day, what starts this whole thing is effectively having a joint account with another person who has the propensity to bet on baseball as someone who is in baseball and who is prohibited from betting on baseball. That's not a formula for success.
I mean, if not anything else, Pat Hoberg has made some really bad decisions based on everything that I've read. I mean, I don't know who gives an account to. I mean, Linz, I love you, but I'm not giving you my joint checking account number. Okay, I mean, I don't understand it. Yeah,
the thing is, right, like, because you think about it, and if the like this is, it didn't appear to be a joint account in terms of two names on the account. It appeared to be the one name on the account and Hoberg placing bets through that account. He was given the credentials to get into that account and make bets, or he called or telegrammed or whatever you call it the requests to bet into the person who actually was the listed owner of that account. The thing on that is, like, again, if you're going to be tied up in that stuff, and it's just unfortunate is what it is, because obviously it's a huge finding. It very clearly says there's no evidence that Hoberg bet on baseball. He's always denied betting on baseball. And so from his mind, he's done nothing wrong, but the account that is affiliated with him betting on other sports has bet on baseball. The question, you might ask yourself, why didn't Pat open his own betting account? I don't know what the calculus for any of this was before. All I can do is analyze what is written in the report and what the quotes are that we have from these various entities and people.
And we should also note that there was a statement from the MLB UA, and it's one that I told you, Linz, we should play with sad music behind it. Uh, it- you know, Pat Hoberg released the following statement. As detailed in the statement that Major League Baseball issued today, Commissioner Manfred has upheld my termination based on failure to conform to high standards of personal conduct and to maintain the integrity of the game of baseball. I take full responsibility for the errors in judgment that are outlined in today's statement. Those errors will always be a source of shame and embarrassment to me. Major League Baseball umpires are held to a high standard of personal conduct, and my own conduct fell short of that standard. That said, to be clear, I have never and would never bet on baseball in any way, shape, or form. I have provided and would I have never provided and would never provide information to anyone for the purpose of betting on baseball. Upholding the integrity of the game has always been of the utmost importance to me. These are the words of Pat Hoberg. Again, I apologize to Major League Baseball and the entire baseball community for my mistakes. I vow to learn from them and to be a better version of myself moving forward. We should also include, Linz, this statement from Major League Baseball Umpires Association following the termination of umpire Pat Hoberg. We thank Commissioner Manfred for his careful consideration of Pat Hoberg's appeal. As Major League Baseball umpires, we have devoted our professional lives to upholding the rules and integrity of the game. If our union believed that an umpire bet on baseball, we would never defend him. But as today's statement from the league makes clear, the neutral fact finder did not find that Pat placed bets on baseball. Yet, we respect Pat's unequivocal acceptance of responsibility for the mistakes that led to his termination. Those the words of Major League Baseball Umpire Association and Pat Hoberg.
Yeah. It's one of those tweener situations, between situations, that could have really gone either way if you think about it, right? Because he didn't directly bet on baseball. No, there's no evidence that he did in anything like that. There's no basis under 21D2 to declare Pat ineligible because he did not bet on his own game. But 21D3 talks about the illegal bookmakers and going through the bookies and all of that. Was it illegal? I did not see any finding that stated this whole setup was illegal or anything. Though betting on an account that is not in your name seems a little suspicious. However, the thing that really turned the tide for me was deleting the messages. Again, that is just something that in my years of experience, not in baseball, but in another industry related to the law, looking at this, time and time again, people who do that stuff, who obstruct, who fail to cooperate with investigations, who delete messages that investigators want to see, etc., that is where the most severe discipline comes from. Not because they necessarily violated what they're alleged to have violated in the first place, but because their actions in covering up whatever evidence is there or is not there, because that action is seen as improper, basically trying to cover your tracks, and you are assumed to have done the worst thing because simply you have the opportunity to turn over some evidence that might have exonerated you, but you did not for whatever reason. So the decision makers in this type of a relationship might just very well assume that you deleted it because you had something to hide, and in this case, the worst thing.
It could have just been out of panic, but we'll never know because Pat Hoberg is no longer a Major League Baseball umpire. He's exhausted his appeals process, and Major League Baseball has issued his termination today. And I guess that just about wraps things up on this situation, but it does open up another position. Three new hires, a couple of new crew chiefs, all coming up going forward close call sports. Any other updates, Linz, on the horizon?
Yeah, just to to put a bow on it, Pat is eligible to apply for reinstatement in 2026. That's not a guarantee in the slightest that he would get that. MLB could full well, Manfred could still say, no, I permanently banned you. You're not coming back. Or Manfred said, yeah, you've learned your lesson. You're come back. But he is eligible to apply for that if he so chooses at that time. My personal thought is I don't think he would get it if he applied for it, given Manfred's pretty strongly worded statement. But just wraps that part up. In terms of CCS, we will have crews for you momentarily. I've been keeping an eye out on the never-ending saga of Cooper v. MLB, the umpire who sued major leagues and the minors by extension for alleged discrimination and harassment as pertains to protected classes. So that's a fun one. It has a little bit of something for everyone. And that thing is just chugging along. There have been recent court filings relative to that, attempts to move to mediation and things to sort of take it off the books. It's a whole saga. I'm sure one of these days we'll get to it. But for now, I'm just tracking that. And of course, we have our season coming up, spring training. We have baseball regular season itself. It'll be another fun year for Close Call Sports.
Can't wait to bring it all to you. But that wraps up this edition, the Emergency Podcast. Unfortunate reasons for doing so in the situation of Pat Hoberg. We're so glad that you've joined us. And until next time, always do what's right, not what's easy. Happy umpiring, everyone.